Thanks very much for that introduction and for inviting me along to, I hope, what will be an incredibly exciting webinar. Anna, can you move forward a slide, please? Okay, I just wanted to say a few words about me, and then we'll get into the bulk of my presentation. As I say, Matt Harrison, I am the project director for social housing decarbonisation. I've been in the job for 21 days now, and so I'm on an exponential learning curve. I am ex-military. I spent many years in the Royal Navy. In my final job for the Royal Navy, I was the Naval Support Director, where I looked after 3 naval bases and the entirety of the naval services infrastructure. So I have a little bit of a background in this kind of business. I'm an engineer by training, mostly weapons and combat systems, and most recently I've been leading major projects. I thought I'd talk a little bit about what the demonstrator is about. I'd like to focus our minds on whole house retrofit. I'll provide some context against the other schemes that we're launching simultaneously, and talk a little bit about the timing of this fund and the urgency with which we're trying to get out of the door. I'm here to learn. I hope you find this useful, and I'm looking forward to getting engaged with many of you in the future. Next slide. So how do we get here? I think many of you will have the background, but certainly you should be aware of the clean growth strategy and our ambition to move our housing stock to an EPC-C by 2035. And for those who are considered to be in fuel poverty, we're trying to get their houses to EPC-C by 2030. In the Conservative Party manifesto, there was a significant commitment to home efficiency. A budget was estimated at about £9 billion. And the National Infrastructure Commission similarly made a recommendation that we invest as a nation £3.8 billion in social housing to bring it up to an appropriate condition. So where we are today, the Chancellor in July announced an economic stimulus package. 3.05 billion of that was aimed at the home efficiency environment, and 50 million within that is here for the social housing demonstrator, which is the scheme that I'm leading. Next slide. Fundamentally, the scheme is about upscaling another scheme we've also launched called Whole House Retrofit. The demonstrator itself is about upscaling our Whole House Retrofit scheme, taking those poor performing houses and actually making a significant investment in them. It's really about driving innovation though, and I want to see that innovation across the whole spectrum of an investment, both from the analysis through the design of a solution, through procurement, through construction, installation, commissioning, handover, and the management of the supply chain. I think for us to make a significant investment in this environment, we need to make incremental improvements, small marginal gains across the whole front in order to try and drive efficiency into this approach. I am seeking a value for money outcome and evidence of that through the scheme so that we can scale up for what hopefully will be a further £3 to £4 billion investment following the spending review announcement that we expect later on in November. In the case of the demonstrator, this scheme is going to be applicable to all nations, so applicants from Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland and England will be welcome. Next slide, please, Anna. In terms of our overarching aims, I think there's some statistics on here which cover off the numbers of houses that we are focused on. So 44% below EPC Band C, that's a key area, translates to 1.8 million social houses. And of those, 14% of them are classed as being in fuel poverty. We really need to get after those houses. We want to drive towards 50 kilowatts per square meter per year as a target. I know that's demanding, and I welcome your feedback as to whether that's realistic to achieve at scale. There are a significant number of houses to upgrade, and hence the focus on innovation to drive out that cost and to drive down the time that it takes for these interventions to occur. Employing modern methods of construction will be fantastic. Pop-up factories are creating environments where we can build at scale, I think is all within the scheme. We are really seeking to stimulate some ideas and some innovation from the supply chain. And of course, we are trying to contribute to the economic stimulus in the post-pandemic environment. Of course, we may be heading towards another spike, which is another challenge for us all. And as I say, what I'm trying to do through the demonstrator is to create the conditions for success for the main scheme, which will be coming along, hopefully with an announcement sometime in November. Next slide. I guess we could have a large conversation about what a whole house retrofit is, but I think in my mind it's about making a single, controlled, efficient intervention. It's to avoid that piecemeal disruption, and we want an integrated approach. We don't want a series of different trades arriving at different approaches. It needs to be an integrated design with an integrated intervention, delivering the kind of benefits that we seek. It is on both the efficiency side and also on the clean heat side, so we're not excluding clean heat from this. Next slide. And in terms of focusing on social housing, I think Eric in his opening slides mentioned that there's a vast challenge out there for all homes in the United Kingdom, all 25 million of them. I think with social housing, one of the benefits we seek is that there are many repeating archetypes. There's an opportunity here which lends itself to, I think, to upscaling. We also think that we can drive greater carbon and energy savings at lower cost by starting with this sector. And actually, I think through creating these large-scale projects, we should be able to allow greater levels of innovation, so investment to drive innovation, which will then have a spillover effect into the wider market. And of course, it does start to impact our commitment to address the fuel poor. Next slide. I mentioned I'd try and raise or situate the context for these schemes. There are currently 4 schemes that are badged under this economic stimulus package. The Green Homes Grant Voucher Scheme, which there's been quite a lot of publicity about. There's another scheme led by the local authorities to get at the fuel poor. The Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, which is obviously the relatively modest scheme compared to the others, and then the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund. To some extent, we're all using a delivery partner to allow us to engage with the market and engage with our customer base. And in our case, we've employed a company called Ricardo PLC, who were engaged in the whole house retrofit competition to help us do the administration of the scheme. Next slide. Perhaps inevitably, the timelines are pretty aggressive. That is related to the government's desire to stimulate the economy by effectively trying to get a significant amount of additional money out into the community. We're going to have a supplier day on the 28th of September. I welcome you registering for that. The details are at the end of the slide pack. We're effectively going to have a combined launch event on the 30th of September. And beyond that, those local authorities or consortia led by local authorities who wish to engage in this will then have about 5 weeks to respond. So relatively short flash to bang. We're aiming to try and get the grants out before Christmas. Next slide. And finally, what I'm realizing from my very, very brief introduction to this community is that it's a vast community. I'm very keen to learn from you. I haven't quite found out what mechanisms I'm going to put in place to allow us to engage with a broad cross-section of this community, but it is important that we do so. Using the Energy Systems Catapult, I think, is a great start, and I'm very much looking to see the outcome of the research that they've commissioned. The approach itself is a bit of a specialist sport, and I think we need to become more effective and efficient as a mainstream activity about the way we go about this kind of business. So if we can use the demonstrator to do good, stimulate the economy, set the conditions for the main scheme, introduce greater levels of innovation, if we can upskill our trades and our supply chain, if we can bring modern methods of construction to bear, and if we can reduce costs so that the government's money goes further, then I'm going to be super pleased. Really, that's it all from me so far. You can find a bit more information on the .gov website. And if anybody's interested in the scheme, please go to the demonstrator email with Ricardo. Thank you.